So we are here at the CXO Functions track, and we will begin with a panel discussion on technology. Allow me to introduce you to your speakers. So our first panelist is Venkat Noth, the founder and CEO of Vinculum. As founder and CEO of Vinculum, Venkat focuses on corporate strategy and global business development. He's experienced in creating startups and building them into successful global companies. We have Apoorv from Web Express. We also have Amrish Siva, the Director of Engineering and Marketing Technology at Target. He's currently the Director at Target Technology Services with over 17 years of experience in leading large programs across 20 countries and creating innovative analytic marketing products. Prior to joining Target, he was the Vice President at GE Money and leading global CRM technology. Next, we have Subrata Dey, the manager of the Western region of GS1 India. With over 23 years of experience in sales and business development in the information technology sector, he's a computer engineering graduate from Mumbai University and equipped with an executive management certification program from IIM Calcutta. We have Bhavik Jhaveri, the founder of Ambad Infotech Private Limited. Bhavik is a serial technopreneur and an emerging market observer. He has successfully founded and built some of the leading ventures in e-commerce, consumer internet, and digital media space across India and the global markets. In his last two ventures, Bhavik has co-founded craftsvilla.com and was CTO for Smile Group's fashionandyou.com. Currently, he's the founder and CEO, as I mentioned, of Ambab, India-based largest product incubator. Next, we have Varga Bakshi, the partner and managing business development at Shopify. Varga has his expertise in e-commerce and has benefited the e-commerce merchants in India widely. Prior to Shopify, he has worked for Google and Martjack. He loves socializing, the internet, and his country more than anything else. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to your moderator, Sanskarsan Banerjee, the Managing Director of Technology, Accenture India. Sanskarsan has spent 18 years in the industry, over 10 of them in CXO roles. In the course of his career, Sanskarsan has implemented complex websites, trading applications, e-commerce, and supply chain solutions. CIO magazine named him among the top 100 CIOs in India in 2012, and the World CIO Council ranked him 42nd in India's most influential CIOs. He has earlier held positions in the Future Group, Emphasis, TDA Capital Partners, and IBM. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming your panelists and moderators. And I shall now hand the session over to you, sir.
Hello, everyone. Is the mic working? Good. So, given that this is e-commerce, technology obviously is a very key part of the E part of commerce here. So we will talk about all the recent evolutions of technology in the space, in the e-tailing space. And, you know, I started my career with e-commerce. I was one of the guys who helped start Rediff's e-commerce. And it was literally, I mean, there was very little E about it. There was actually a guy in the background punching the orders into a credit card machine. The E part was only the website. And since then, things, of course, have evolved considerably. And as we have seen, it has gone to a scale that is now starting to be what we could happily say world scale. There are quite literally billions of dollars of transactions that are happening on the e-commerce platforms in India. But this evolution has been quite interesting. You know, if you look at a few years ago, the evolution used to be primarily driven out of marketplaces. Now, most retailers have started to realize that marketplaces where you participate is a bit like the other market. You know, you don't really have an identity of your own. People come in there, look at the 50 vendors selling pretty much the same thing, compete with each other. There is no real brand identity. And so stores in particular have started to look at their own identity, which also usually means their own technology presence. And so let me ask, Shopify is probably the closest to this revolution.
Thanks, Shankar. All right, so I think I would like to take a step back and kind of talk about a small-scale retailer, looking to go online today. So the first thing that happens is they want to start selling on a Flipkart or an Amazon, an eBay, or a Jabong, or a Myntra. These are popular marketplaces. You see advertisements every day. Retailer wants to be a part of that marketplace, selling to the customers directly. But like Shanky, said that the maturity in the market has, started coming in, and now people do understand that it's very vital to have their own website where they sell directly to customers. It's also vital to have a social media presence wherein you can sell through, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. So yeah, I think technologically speaking, first that small-scale retailer was on one platform, like let's say eBay, then started selling on multiple platforms and realized that he needs to have a real-time inventory and order management system for all these different channels in which he's selling. He then slowly matures into, understanding that the brand needs to have an online presence and hence has his own website and starts, customer engagement activities via, social media. So that's how I think technically we have, evolved, maturity has come, and Shopify, like I think some of you already might be knowing, is a do-it-yourself e-commerce platform, which helps, retailers have their own storefronts, accepts credit card payments, and also for people who are into, the brick and mortar model, we give POS systems, etc. So yes, the maturity has come, and India is technologically evolving into a more,
But my question here is Shopify too simple a starting point? Isn't it too much of a, one single set of simple customizations, kind of a Reliance, Raymond's made to measure. It's basically still an off-the-shelf suit, but they change the height, they change the pant lengths, they change the pockets a little bit. Isn't Shopify too simple a solution?
Absolutely. Shopify, I think, is too simple a solution. It is a do-it-yourself platform. We mainly target SMBs who are looking to start selling online because, at that point of time, you need a user-friendly platform than a very, an open-source platform which requires a lot of coding. So simplicity is, what we have always kept in mind while building the product, and that's what has actually made us successful.
So what happens if somebody wants to grow? Maybe I'll ask you. What happens if somebody wants to grow beyond the skin of a Shopify?
So primarily, I think our outlook, or probably it doesn't matter our outlook, the outlook towards technology, when you're starting up, is not about, so basically there are two stages to business, and funny part is that these two stages of technology adaptation in business are very close to each other as we see. One is the MVP part where you really want to create your quick minimum viable product, launch it, prove it, and then probably you think, okay, the business is scalable, you want to really put the further investments in technology, build right product, invest in technology, cloud, architecture, backend, stuff like that. The problem is that in consumer internet, you never know. So you launch today, you got, probably registered by TechCrunch, and tomorrow you have a huge PR story out of it, and third day you have a huge amount of traffic coming on your site, and can really a SaaS platform sustain to that is the question. So I think for young startups, even matured startups today, the decision making to right technology adaptation is, are we really just trying to prove it to ourselves, or probably are we doing a quick consumer test, or are we really looking at a serious business opportunity in long run? If we are, then customization is the way to go ahead. Today, it's all about out-executing. There is nothing unique or standard to an idea. If you talk about Zomato, Burp was always existing, and Zomato just out-executed on technology. You talk about Housing.com, 99 Acres was always existing, and Zomato just out-executed, Housing just out-executed on the product side, on the technology side, on the proprietary algorithms that they are building. So incubating your technology product in-house or with right kind of extensions as team is a right way to go. Proving your business before you invest in technology is where SaaS will come in picture, as I look at it.
So Target has gone through a similar evolution, right? Initially, they were part of the Amazon world, and then they broke out and has since become one of the world's largest e-commerce presences. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the challenges you faced, how the growing up happened.
Okay, can you guys hear me now? Okay. Um, so Shanky, as you were talking, so Target has gone through a major evolution. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Target, but Target is among the top 3 general merchandise retailers in the US. We have about 1,800 stores out there. We're also among the top 5 general merchandise e-commerce players in the US. So when you think about our stores, as I said, 1,800 stores. Some of our largest stores are probably bigger than the Wankhede Stadium cricket ground, right? So that's the kind of stores that we have. So something to think about as I explain some of the experience that we had to go through. About 2 or 3 years ago, we actually celebrated 50 years of having stores in the US. So we are an old organization. So our e-commerce journey was really, the way Frankie talked about it. So it was a side business firstly, and it was really a way of advertising so that we can get new guests back into our store. So that was really how it started. And for us, when it started off, it made a lot of sense to go with an established platform. So we actually set up on Amazon.com. Of course, it was private labeled, if you can. I mean, it was not really a marketplace model, but we still went on Amazon.com. About 4 years ago, that's when we figured out that Amazon is actually a serious competitor to Target. Till then, we were not even counting Amazon in our list of competitors, right? So it was always Walmart, Costco, Kohl's, Nordstrom, what have you. And suddenly there was Amazon, and then that's when we realized we had to get out of that platform as quickly as possible, right? The moment we put the stake in the ground and said, hey, we've got to get out of this platform, we actually had a date. We said, okay, 2 years of intense work, and we for sure have to get out of the Amazon contract. With that date in mind, the only way we felt we could get out was really by investing in large-scale packages, right? So we went ahead, signed deals with IBM. So we are big users of WebSphere Commerce Server. We are big users for the Sterling order management system, a whole bunch of other technologies that make up that ecosystem, right? So we did that for a couple of years. Let me come to the story right now. So right now, here's the real experience that a Target guest can go through, right? So a Target guest is sitting at her home. She is watching TV. She has her iPad open. She's actually looking at our curated Pinterest website. Okay, you can check it out, awesomeshop.target.com. So this is a curated Pinterest website for Target. So out there, she likes something, and she says, hey, she actually wants to buy that. So she places directly an order from there. So that leads to target.com. She's able to check it out. And when she checks out, she can pay through Apple Pay, right? So it is integrated with Apple Pay. And then while she's actually executing the order, she says, hey, I want this to be picked up in the store because I can't wait for it to be shipped. Okay, so I want this to be picked up in the store. And guess what? I don't want to go to the store and pick it up. I actually want my husband, who will be coming back from work, I want him to pick it up on his way back. Okay, so that's what she instructs on the order. Now the order goes to the store. Store associates actually find this item, pick it up, and say, hey, this is ready for pickup. And the husband now knows, okay, he can pick it up in the next 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. On the way, he's coming into the store. And this is a piece that we are testing out currently. It's not yet in production, but we're saying, hey, as the guest is coming to the store, we detect how far away the guest is, and we actually bring the item out to the curb so that the person that's picking up the item doesn't even have to get out of his or her car. Okay, so that's the sort of experience that we have right now. Again, scale. We have about 50 million unique visitors per month, right? So that's a pretty large number. Our peak order volume is around 90,000 orders per hour, so that's the kind of order volumes that we've seen so far. So fairly large e-commerce operation, if you will. And what we realize now is that our large packages probably don't really cut it for us. We want to move faster. We want to simplify things. So we've gone out and actually started modularizing all our technology products into what I would call microservices, right? And this becomes especially important when you think about the fact that about 60 to 70% of our visits, e-commerce visits, actually happen out of the mobile, right? And so that way, it's extremely important that we did that, right? So that's sort of what has been our journey. We continue to do that, go microservices, APIs, cloud, big data. really embracing those. Oh,
So what you heard was a fairly world-class multi-channel, omni-channel experience, right? Which covers social media, covers web, it covers the mobile, it covers curbside, it covers physical stores. Do you think that kind of stuff is possible in India? Is there a maturity of technology? Is there a maturity of provider?
I think the larger stores will aim to give that kind of an experience to customers. Indian consumers are widely traveled and they expect the best of services. So whether the infrastructure exists or not, I think it's a very good opportunity for retailers to be able to give that kind of an experience. So I think from a technology perspective, in my view, one of the critical pieces is to have real-time inventory across all the stores. If you can facilitate that, of course, you may not want to do it at the curb because that is not an area of interest maybe for the consumers in India. But you still want the time, the convenience of your package being ready when you drive in is an advantage you can give. And you want to go further. I mean, you want to be able to do inventory lookups before you go to the shop. You want to be able to buy online and pick it up at the store, reserve the stock before you go to the store. You want to be able to buy in one store and return to the other store. These are all things which are not unique to US customers. Indian consumers want these things too, but of course, we are talking of large retailers here. So it is different areas. Of course, yeah, I think that's my view on that.
So what are the technology pieces that make it happen? Are they available in India? Are there Indian providers that make it happen?
I think from a real-time store inventory data information, I mean, we offer a solution for the same. So the key thing is to be able to integrate to the POS systems and to be able to integrate to the retail systems which you use. I think Target uses Oracle Retail. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, custom solution. So I think that's the critical piece. You will need to be able to integrate it across your retail systems. But once you are able to achieve that, the platform can facilitate real-time inventory being available. So technologically, I don't see a challenge. I mean, it is a tough project to do, but I don't see a problem. But of course, it also takes you to the case of making sure product information is consistent. So I think that will possibly be answered by GS1.
So it's interesting that you say that. Technologically, it's possible, but stores are having a tough time doing it. I'll go back to Target. Do you think the lessons learned are because they haven't how to do it, or is it because Indian retail is still too fragmented to make this possible?
Okay, I'm no expert in the Indian e-commerce market, but I'll give it some shots, right? So one is the cost structures that you see in the US are very different, right? So for example, fulfillment center employee costs are way higher than stores. And then suddenly we are finding that it's actually cheaper to ship from stores. And guess what? When you put things on clearance, it makes even more sense to ship from stores, right? So that is one example. The second thing I would say is, I think e-commerce in India is still very nascent, right? Which then means people are still looking at, the urban consumers and so on and so forth, where I think the need is very different from what you would think about, the rural side. Target's experience, here's what I would say. We right now ship not only from our fulfillment centers, but we ship from about 130, 140 stores, which actually brings us within a day's delivery of 91% of US households, which I think is a big thing for us. So for us, the way we think we can beat Amazon in e-commerce is by shipping from store and really being very aggressive about exposing our store inventory and saying, hey, you know what, last 3 items remaining and order in the next 2 hours and you will get it tomorrow, which is a completely different thing. And the size, I want to, Venkat talked about the size of this problem, and maybe that's again something that will be interesting. It's fascinating. So imagine this, we have 1,800 stores. Each of those stores carry about 300,000 SKUs, okay? Just do the math. That's already 500 million inventory records. And stores are pretty much on, right? Transactions hitting them every millisecond. Orders coming in from Target.com. Absolutely, right? It's just crazy. And in the stores, you have things that, is neither here nor there. A guest picks up something, an iPad, puts into the cart, and then is walking around So that, as far as your systems are concerned, the iPad is available, but guess what? Actually, it's not available for sale anymore. So those are the kind of challenges I would say.
And of course, there's a product information challenge. How do you synchronize product information? And we import so much stuff from China, we import so much stuff from various parts of the world. The barcodes that are there are not directly usable, so we end up, how does especially a small retailer trying to sell across a multitude of channels manage this cost effectively?
Yeah, hello. GS1 India, for those who are not aware actually, is primarily a supply chain standards development organization. So we operate on the principle, there are 3 pillars actually, identify, capture and share. With the identify pillar, we are able to uniquely assign a global company prefix to each product which is sold in the modern trade. So with the GTIN number which is allocated, you can do a track and trace, you can roll back, you can say roll out to multiple channels. So today you are selling in on a brick and mortar channel. You can use the same product identification, which is the GTIN, to sell on the online space, that is the e-commerce. So an online space also uses the same standards which an offline retailer uses. So the unique identification of the product, which is the GTIN, is the common factor which links all the SKUs moving in the supply chain.
But is there a common GTIN registry? I mean, in the US it really works because the manufacturer puts a barcode which then every retailer in the US down to the small corner shop can read. In India, the manufacturer puts a barcode, maybe Future Group can read it, but the corner shop has to re-barcode it or type the data in directly.
So to answer this query, basically GS1 India is developing a data pool which will have a data pool of all the GTINs which is issued in India linked to all the product attributes. So we are developing a portal which will have the GTIN linked to product attributes, which is bare minimum for a retailer and an e-tailer. So maybe we'll capture about 20 to 25 product attributes in this data pool and will be made available to all those who are interested in using these product data attributes.
What about things like images?
Images is also a part of this data pool. So anybody who wants to subscribe to images for their planogramming purpose or for their e-commerce online sales, they can do through this data pool.
And you're going to charge a lot for this data pool?
This is, since GS1 is basically a not-for-profit organization, some of the features which are common to all the retailers and e-tailers will be made at no charge. But yes, for certain high-end features like images, there will be some basic subscription model. It will not be a very high charge, we can assure you that.
Good, not-for-profit. Yeah. Sounds like Flipkart. But we also, so there's the last piece is the actual physical supply chain, right? And the big elephant in the room, taking off from Flipkart. Their biggest loss-making proposition outside customer acquisition is cash on delivery. And, we've done increasing studies that cash on delivery is not real. I mean, it's reducing, but very, very slowly. Rediff had a problem with cash on delivery. Rediff started cash on delivery in the mid-90s, in the late 90s. And they ran into a big loss. The same losses pretty much seem to continue. The same proportion of people seem to continue doing cash on delivery. So are there better alternatives? Is there a way to deal with this problem or to reduce this problem? Cash on delivery, the biggest problems are very well known, right? Fraud, high refusal rates, the COD agent runs away with the money. And this is especially a problem with higher value goods. If you sell a mobile phone, that's a lot of money for a person to carry around. If you sell, still higher, more complex stuff, then, so how do you deal with this problem? How do you deal with the floating cash problem? How do you deal with the problem of high refusals? So maybe you should ask Web Express if they have seen anything like this.
Yeah, thanks. I guess cash on delivery is going to remain. It's not going to go away. And the primary reason is not because people love cash, it's because people don't trust each other in this country in all aspects. And, we don't trust the vehicle which is on the signal, whether is going to break the signal, yes or no, you don't know, right? So you don't even trust a red light. So where is the question of trusting somebody who's unknown and sending you some goods which you don't know how good or bad are? It is improving though, as there is a mature class of e-commerce customer happening. They are more comfortable with the Amazons and the Flipkarts of the world, and they are okay with doing prepaid amount. But as we will go to the next set of people, next 200 million customers, you will have them paying by cash. So cash on delivery is not going away. So to answer your question, how do I reduce the risk in that? One of the ways the technology is trying to come up with is that offering an option to a customer at the door saying that, okay, you don't trust me, but now your goods are with you. Would you now mind paying me by a debit card or a credit card, but how does he do it? Now this option was not possible a couple of years ago in a very cost feasible way, because you had to go for some special dedicated terminals, which will cost a lot of money. If you got 6,000 bikers, you had to give 6,000 terminals. So e-commerce companies kind of stayed away from it. Very small number was done. But with the improving technology, what has happened is that you can use your standard mobile phone, 6,000 rupee Android phone, take a kind of add-on Bluetooth device, and that Bluetooth device becomes your POS. Compared to the standard solution which are available today, which you see in your stores, these solutions are costed like almost 1/3 or 1/4. So the cost is going down, one. Secondly, some of these people have come up with very innovative business models. Rather than saying that I'll charge you by 1% or 2% or 3% of the transaction, they are making kind of a flat charge per month, how many transactions per month kind of business models. So that part of technology is really coming in a big way, and we do see that over the next 3 to 4 years, by the way, numbers are in their favor. There are 380 million people in India with debit cards and about 20-25 million with credit cards. So with 400 odd million people having an ability to pay, obviously convincing them to pay on using this particular cash on delivery device is going to be a key driver for e-commerce growth in India. I do see it's going to pick up in a big way.
So how do you see mobile POSs evolving? Are you seeing businesses adopt it? Are you seeing retailers trying to look at mobile POS as their primary POS mode rather than having an in-store POS?
I think we did some, within the store we tried that, but the question really is about cash on delivery. So here's well, of course in the US that doesn't work, but we still know that a lot of transactions in the store happens by cash, correct? So one of the things that we are working on is a concept called OmniCard. So we talked earlier about where you can place an order and pick it up in store. And now we are working on a concept where you actually create the cart at home, correct? But then pay. So order online, pay in store. So when you go into store, you actually pay by cash instead of having to pay the credit, actually pay by credit card on the website itself. So that is one thing that we're working on.
So to go back to the front end, a very critical part of all these experiences is integrating all the pieces into what a consumer can understand, right? So far, and this I'll challenge you a little bit on this, something like a Shopify. How are you integrating these new innovations? I mean, how does somebody take a Shopify, which is a template-based solution, and integrate, let's say, cart at home? How does one do that? Or how does it integrate a COD solution where the guy is carrying a device?
All right. I think it's very important for a solution, a SaaS-based solution, an easy solution like Shopify to have an API. First off, I think that's the starting point, because with an API, you would allow any kind of technological apps that are possible to be integrated. Help the merchant scale up. To give you an example, Shopify is a very a simple template solution, right? But then used by very mature clients, let's say like Mandira Bedi Saris and Designs and Yepme World, etc. Now coming back to the question of coming back to your question of how do you basically grow this particular. Could you repeat your?
How do you do these integrations that are not really standard, that are not part of the template, that are the core of innovation in retail? I take a Shopify website, but I don't want to look like every other Shopify store. I want to offer not just visual appeal, but also functional appeal. I want to do things differently.
So we have an app store in Shopify, which has got about 1,000 apps, which cater to different kind of applications. Like, let's say, for example, there is an app called Dressy, on Shopify. It's by a company named Imaginate from Hyderabad. They basically help you put your Facebook pictures and see, how you would look. It's like a virtual dressing room. So you have an apparel store, and you can actually see how you would look, in that particular dress. That way, you've got referral marketing apps and COD apps and pin code restrictions. So yeah.
No, that's still innovation that's available to every user of Shopify. I want to do my own unique innovation.
So with an API, you can have your own customization. Apart from the apps that are available on the App Store, a developer will be able to have his own customizations, be it in terms of functionality or in terms of design.
So are there a lot of local, do you see a lot of integration with Shopify happening in the front ends that you're working with?
See, primarily, so SaaS platforms are obviously, software as a service. So you have to take it as they are. Obviously, as an ecosystem, the market pool is so huge that they really don't have to look at every single retailer you have matured to certain size. Obviously, if you talk about Target today, and they're talking about Omni cards, and we have our clients like Shopper Stop, we have Metro Shoes, Jimmy's here, who are already in Omni channels. They're doing this very nicely. So they have matured to the next level of processes, next level of culture. The complete organization charts have been rebuilt for just Omni channel as a new ecosystem to be built within the company. They're doing a different kind of trainings across country. So technology, when you adopt as a starting point, is different. You obviously have to evolve. There will be integrations, there will be backend changes. You cannot really today be on a backend application as well, which is a legacy application, which will not allow you to scale as you grow. So middle tiers have been built. So everyone has a huge amount of opportunity out there. It's a choice. So again, I think when we're talking about so much of technology and automation, the two examples I just gave, they probably don't have fully integrated technologies even today, but they are doing omni-channel. So it's about people. You yourself mentioned you were doing Rediff e-commerce by doing an offline transaction, right? So today the system is into a learning phase, I would say. They are looking at various opportunities. Technology will never be a roadblocker. It will only enable. It's the matter of how and where we want to adopt it, and it's very much available. So omni-channel is very much available. Integrations are very much available. It's the matter of choice at what stage your business is and how much you really want to invest in technology at that stage. Cloud is evolving. You invest in infrastructure, you invest in cloud, depending on how you really want to scale the business, how you really want to look at the business opportunity. So I don't see it as a challenge right now. Obviously, Shopify is a good system. It's very much integrable. But at the same time, as your business mature, adopt to new technologies, build new platforms. That's not a problem at all.
So let me ask somebody independent of the solution space. You work with a lot of retail technology companies, right?
Yeah.
It seems to me that multi-channel sounds like a very expensive, deep-pocketed game.
It need not be a very expensive or a deep-pocketed game, actually. If you have basically your solution framework laid down from the very beginning based on a standardized approach, then you don't need to invest heavily in funding to scale up or grow your business. So basically, what I feel is having a standardized approach, unique solutions can be developed without having to invest heavily in infrastructural funding.
I think going multi-channel is not as complex as it used to be. From a systemic technology perspective, when you look at it, most of the functionality that you're looking for in terms of supplier panels or order management solutions are readily available in the market. And they're available on the cloud. Going back to the beauty of a SaaS solution is the fact that there are many developers sitting out there creating solutions on top of the products which are available, the platforms which are available, which means you can actually get started very, very quickly. So today, products are there to help you list your products on different marketplaces if your products suit selling on different marketplaces. And from an order management or a supplier portal perspective, you have ready-made software available, so which can be integrated into your existing systems. So you don't necessarily need to know, trying to sell online or sell multi-channel. You just need to get the basics right. Technology is not a challenge.
So I'm going to ask a bit of a challenging question. Now, Target is obviously, it has deep pockets. It has considerable technology expertise, gathered not just over the e-commerce space, but also, you're one of the world's largest users of data in any case. Do you feel today, looking at the external market, that solutions have become snap fit together, Lego block enough that a small guy in India can actually put together, maybe not a Target scale model, but something that is functionally complete enough to compete in the same space? What is your view?
Absolutely. I think we've now realized that small is beautiful, right? So as I was saying, even in the Target journey, we started with the big, package software that are out there. But then slowly we are saying, hey, there are pieces that we don't need the biggies for, right? And a lot of it we are actually custom developing. We are saying, and a lot of it is based on open source platforms. A lot of them are based on, cloud. So we are doing all of that stuff, and I think that's a big shift, and we are realizing that's one. Second, I don't know if the Unbox guys are here, but then we also run a Target accelerator program. One of the reasons is really to say, hey, are there startups out there that have unique solutions that we can test out, we can actually integrate with our applications, right? So that is another thing that we do constantly, both here and in the US.
So you see increasingly that the solution, the landscape is becoming snap fit, that people are starting to pull together different pieces of solution and be able to seal them together fairly efficiently, and it no longer needs an IBM or a large integrator or like Accenture. Yeah. And no, so my question is, do you see it in practice? In theory, APIs are great, but sometimes what is great in theory doesn't always pan out in the field.
So I think there are a lot of examples of pieces that we use, correct? So take, for example, I don't know, ratings and reviews, correct? So we use Bazaar Voice for our service. So that's an example. We talked about Curbside earlier. That's an extremely small organization. We just bought a company called Powered Analytics. That's again a handful of people that have been focused on, on in-store analytics kind of stuff. So I think that's a constant thing. So we are constantly looking. We are at a core platform level, right? So we talk to, we use DataStax Cassandra big time, right? So that's an example. We just started talking to a few other in-memory data grid providers and things like that. So I think your question is, hey, across solutions. So you had something like IBM come in and say, hey, here's something that starts with the database, with the app server, with all your functionality built in. And then you have integrators like Accenture or whoever come in and also say, hey, we'll help you actually implement it. I think that is changing quite a bit, and we are saying we need niche solutions. A lot niche, quick, exactly, right? We are saying we actually put something into production every 2 weeks. That's extremely important for us now. In the earlier time frame, it used to be, hey, if I get one out every quarter, that was a big deal. And so those are kind of things that we are looking at.
So now I think we should put up the panel for questions. You've heard a lot of different opinions on the panel. We should open it up for questions.
Yeah, my name is Hari. I'm from Tribenotics e-commerce consulting. So I heard two extremes here. One is the do-it-yourself Shopify model, and then the Target model of do-it-yourself, very complex, world-class, scalable systems. So when a company matures from the Shopify to this, there is a path where you are in the small and medium segment. You can't do it yourself, and at the same time, you can't invest in these kind of technologies. So there's a choice that needs to be made. Should I outsource the entire technology platform to somebody else? And I just focus on my business. So would any of you have experience in that kind of a situation where you've made that choice and said, I don't want to get involved in technology, but I'll run my brand and my sales and my customer acquisition and touch points? So is that a space that's profitable for people to be in?
What do you do? Can I just probably quickly?
My name is Hari. I run a company called Tribenotics in the e-commerce consulting space, digital marketing.
E-commerce consulting, digital marketing space. And the question is there a space in between Shopify and do-it-yourself?
Yeah, where the businesses don't have to worry about technology at all. And they just focus on scaling their business from a brand and sales perspective and probably customer acquisition and touch points, supporting them. So technology is outsourced and I don't have to worry about it. It's a commodity at some level.
So obviously, so probably primarily that's the area where we probably work with, So we have accounts right from a young startup to probably the mature startups like AskMe, and then we have enterprise businesses like Shopperstop and DLF brands and young retailers also working with us. So I think even for us, there are a lot of startups who meet us, who tell us, okay, we are at this stage, we really don't have, it's primarily in your business model that how you really want to look at. One stage, obviously, when it comes to your front end, there has to be a unique footprint. Okay, Uber cannot be built by saying that I'll take a taxi application. You cannot really take something available and build something on, as a unique proposition. Even as you go and meet investors will look at options where you build your own IPs in your product. It cannot be a rented product. Obviously, your back-end applications can very much be on SaaS, can be a rented application. But as you grow, there has to be a significant investment in technology. And when you invest in technology, please look at it as technology. It's not a cost at all. It's an IP that you are building. This is where you will build value. You will not build value for pieces which you bought from 20 different places. That's where your unique IP lies. And I think technology is key to you. Data is key to you. You cannot really move it on third party.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to add a point to that. I think most SaaS platforms today in India also have understood that there is a gap there between going from an SMB to actually a very enterprise scale merchants. So I think most SaaS platforms today, give you an option of how you can be treated as their special customer because of the kind of bandwidth you're going to use or because of the kind of support attention that you might require. So I would still vouch for the fact that you outsource your technology. And rather, concentrate on scaling your business. And I think, move on to the more mature plans on your SaaS platform, to have a better experience.
Good afternoon. Thank you, all the leaders, to be here. My name is Vishal Sanghvi. I'm a technology entrepreneur. So I want to ask that, we have designed the product for through voice over IP and video over IP to targeting the e-retailing industry, actually. So now we have prepared in-house our product. So now we want to approach the e-retailing market. So which channel is good for us? Either we have to go for the consultant or we approach directly to the, e-retailing direct players, actually. So yeah, we have launched the product we designed the customized Skype kind of video interactions. E-marketplace, website owners or, any marketplace can provide the video conversations or voice conversation or IP, either through their mobile apps or through their websites. So now I want to reach my product to the this industry, actually. So should I contact directly to the marketplace or should I go with the consultant? There are also many consultants also available who have better approach, understanding with the players.
So that isn't really a technology question, but I would suspect that you would need to do both. You would need to work with some consultants as well as approach the market directly. Most big consultants will not work with you till you've established a certain base. And so therefore you will have to go and get your first few customers on your own. And subsequently you will find some interest from consultants. You will be able to tie up with them because consultants will put in their time and money. So they need to know that your solution has a certain customer base already.
I'm not 100% sure if the answer is right here, but there are technology channel companies as well. So which will take your product and become your channel. They have something like 200 salesmen in India who will actually go to different places and market your product on your behalf and take a cut of the revenue.
Yeah, so I want to know such kind of the technology system integrator who supply the technology to the...
Not a system integrator, sir. This would be purely direct marketing kind of companies who actually take your product or your apps and sell them. on your behalf. There are companies which do it.
Okay.
So maybe those are your target. But I don't know enough to talk. So I'm just taking a wild guess.
Do you have any examples, such kind of, you know?
I can introduce.
Okay, I will take, offline I will take it. Okay.
Hi, I'm Jimmy and I work at Metro Shoes. I head the e-commerce entity over there. Am I audible? Yeah. Just like how human beings have evolved, you know, it's actually taken I'm assuming would have taken a long time. I believe as technology ever since iPod into iPhones at this point of time, and I was a part of the Mudjack platform. I closely work with Ambab and Bhavik's team closely on that front, and when we've moved over from one platform to the other. And I also realized that while we are making these transitions, you are now hearing news of Myntra saying that we will probably at one point of time shut down our desktop websites and go on to mobile websites per se. As technology experts, what do you think is technology evolving up to? Is there a saturation beyond the mobile websites or multi-channel options, or is it actually going to evolve any further? So is there an end to it? Or, for example, the websites that we actually transitioned over, that we were on Mudjack, we thought we were a little late. Now that we are on Magento, we realize that we are a little late. Now that we probably plan to go on to mobile, we may then realize we probably are a little late. So how do you think as experts, what is your foresight towards technology over here?
So I'll put this up to the panel as a whole, but my take is that evolution never stops. Your particular path of evolution may have stopped. You may have chosen a path that has no future, but evolution never stops. You must learn to, drop your path. So iPod to iPhone is a good example. iPods have reached a dead end of evolution. There is no real future for an iPod anymore, possibly. And so Apple has also started, moved elsewhere. And that happens to all technologies. There's no way of predicting a technology. You can predict a technology trend, but you can only see it so far. After that, you have to be able to move to the next trend that comes up. You must be able to shift gears. And companies that have been most successful in technology, the longest lasting technology company in the world is IBM. They've gone through 4 such dramatic shifts. They started selling weighing machines, butcher scales, which in those days was actually a technology. Now you think of it as fairly routine. But they went through 4 such cycles, and now they're in trouble again. Maybe they will survive, maybe they will not. Apple has gone through 3 such cycles. A technology company will technology will never stop evolving. A technology company may indeed stop evolving.
So do you think at the closest horizons, there would ever be a change in need for the existing multi-channel or your mobile websites to ever evolve?
I think, Jimmy, I'll take this. Primarily, it's not about technology at all. As he rightly mentioned, we all have to blur this. Technology is just a channel. So, eventually the business is business. You will have to evolve, blur the difference between all the channels, invest in technology which will allow you to be as flexible, as experimental as possible. Because if at all you have invested in something which will become a legacy in itself or will achieve
we would really like
the
to thank our speakers and our moderator for an incredible session. I know everyone here benefited very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our panelists very much. Once again, like I said, you can take the questions offline. The next